All right, I'm ready to start, guys. I guess we got to figure out an opening.
Well, do we ever do like bits or little skits to like start spotlights like this? I know I'm like new, but it's like I wonder if there's like a.
Well,
I think that's pretty cringy.
I mean, I'm the one that usually opens this.
I mean, like, but any like little like fun kickers or anything at all, or is it just like pretty cookie cutter?
Well, I don't know, dude, because like sometimes it's just it's not funny, and sometimes Dalton.
I mean, I like to just be straightforward.
It makes sense, yeah,
dude. Can I get a word like edgewise in here at all with this?
I'm just saying, there's a way we've always done things.
You know what, dude? Then why don't you make the intro? Go ahead.
I got nothing, man. It's yours.
I built this podcast in a cave with scraps.
Welcome to yet another geek show.
This is your host, Dalton Lee.
This is your host, Alex Ecker.
This is your host, Jacob. Oh, God.
All right. So a decade plus too late, we are starting our series of MCU movies. Because there are not obviously already 4 million videos and podcasts on this movie. And it turns out 4 million is the number you need. So,
or rather, yet another
take on an enormous movie that there's nothing new to be said about, but nonetheless, we're geeks on the internet, and that's just what we have to do. Rules are rules. This is initiation. I feel like you're not a real internet geek entertainer until you've covered the entire MCU and Star Wars.
I mean, it's all right.
We will also cover at the same time. I'm editing those episodes together.
Yeah, we're waiting for the internet's permission, I guess.
It's okay. We're late to the game just like DC Comics was, so everything's perfectly all right.
Good old Detectives Comics.
No one can see what happened to Dalton.
Guys, I'm actually more excited to cover the DC Extended Universe, so can we just start with Man of Steel now?
I'm gonna need more wine for that.
Iron Man, Man of Steel, what's the difference?
Oh, right, exactly. They both got medals in their name. Oh, I know what's different.
Shit.
Something didn't get snapped, but someone snapped.
There was so much pain in that.
No kudos. No kudos for that one.
Do I have to yell again?
I mean, they are both like very much Jesus figures in both their franchises, so I guess it works out.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do we begin? The first one, the beginning, you guys, before the MCU changed comic book movies as we know it, and firmly established that no one else knows how to make expanded universes. Okay, but so we started kind of simple here, right? Like, this is a lot more traditional, of course, by nature of being the first one. I feel like they kind of started with their least not interesting, but their least fantastical character, and they've been kind of slowly amping up, like, what level of ridiculous do we think the audience can handle here? Okay. So this isn't, like, any further beyond reality than, like, the Spider-Man movies we already had, the X-Men movies we already had. We slowly worked our way up to shit like Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
So, Jake.
Yeah.
What was your big revelation of this movie that you didn't realize until like the end?
Okay. So I was watching this movie and it took me forever because when I watched it when I was I can say when I was a kid. It was that forever ago. I'm watching it and it's whenever Obadiah Stane paralyzes Tony Stark and I'm staring at him and I go, "Holy shit, that's Jeff Bridges." I had no idea. Like, I've never seen him bald. And he got real close to him, and I just watched Tron, and I was like, son of a bitch. Redefine the whole movie for me.
That's my favorite.
I will say I didn't know who Jeff Bridges was the first time I saw this movie. I wasn't today years old when I figured it out, but
Right.
but I did not know in 2008. Guys, this was the first disc I ever received from Netflix, for what that's worth.
Oh my
Whoa.
God.
when it was primarily a disc service. And to be honest, I fell asleep trying to watch it twice and sent it back without trying.
Oh, that's bad.
Which is amazing, considering that by the time the Avengers came out, like, I was loving these movies and, you know, was doing nothing but reading comics. Eventually ended up with a Spider-Man tattoo. I don't know why it didn't sell me the first time I tried to watch it or the second time. But now, I guess let's see how it holds up. So a lot of people still put this, like, not at their number one, but like their top 5 of the MCU. And do you guys feel like it's just kind of getting bonus credit for being the first without actually being the best?
I think so.
Yeah, that's actually fair.
Yeah.
And do we all think that's because of the third act? Just the whole thing.
Okay, yeah. That's
Right,
actually,
okay.
yeah. Wow,
Yeah,
I
no.
didn't think about it till just now.
So the thing it gets right, you know, the most is undeniably Tony Stark.
Mhm.
Yes.
And, like, not that Jeff Bridges does a bad job here, but they managed to make a really interesting and unique hero, but just the villain is the most boring, forgettable thing. I mean, Jeff Bridges did what he could with the material he was given. It's not a knock on him. It's a knock on what was written for the character. Marvel would keep kind of using this trope of doing a hero origin story and giving them a villain that's just a mirror version of the hero, like has the same power set, sometimes a very similar origin. And so in this case, it's guy in a suit versus guy in a bigger, scarier suit. But they forgot to make the guy in that suit interesting in any way.
Yeah. He was pretty much only there for plot to continue.
Yeah, Obadiah
if they
Stane was
didn't
more
have-
like a foil for a Tony Stark. It kind of like with him just being this basic cookie cutter bad guy, Tony Stark kind of shines as being the guy who's had that revelation of, I was being this terrible person selling all these weapons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I guess to some extent, like, when I try to think about it critically, what doesn't work, I'm not really getting it into words. On paper, it sounds fine. This idea that, like, you know, Tony's introduced as, like, you know, his whole arc is starting out as an asshole and becoming less of an asshole and rather just like a funny dude with good intentions
And money.
And that transition starts here. And so they introduce him as, like, you know, a warmonger. What the villain's named. He's a guy that makes his money on war, and by the end of the movie feels bad about it. And so the villain on paper is, let's mirror image this character and show what the worst possible version of Tony Stark could have been. And they did that, but maybe the issue is that the worst mirror version of Tony Stark isn't actually interesting.
There's no finesse with Warmonger. You know what I mean? It's I don't know, like,
oh, I'm sorry.
I was biting my tongue. I'm so sorry.
Oh shit! Jacob was like, "Am I wrong?"
Because I had my phone in front of me going, wait a minute, like, did I remember that completely wrong? It's like, holy crap.
right.
Oh. Not that anyone comments on anything we post, but if they did, there would be comments correcting me. And I'm going to have to start lecturing people. Like, please finish watching the thing.
I'm only 2 minutes in, but I'm preemptively writing my counterback comment to your comment about the podcast.
At 10 minutes and 5 seconds, he says, warmonger, not ironmonger.
Hashtag canceled.
Hashtag
I
I'm
realized
dead fucking
it
serious.
because I was trying to remember if they actually dropped the name anywhere in the movie, because they almost never do with villains.
No,
I don't think
rarely.
they did.
And they do, but not officially. He uses the phrase. He says something like, "You and I, we're ironmongers, Tony." Something like that.
Oh, okay.
So not as a name, but they drop it as kind of a Easter egg for fans.
Yeah, like a clever nod, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's cute. All right.
That should have been a line in the movie. That should have been a line in the movie. It's cute, Tony. We're ironmongers.
All right. Now on to Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm sorry, Gwyneth. I'm gonna have to make another edit there, so it doesn't look like I said something wrong.
Not that like we hate her or anything, and her wooden acting in the entire franchise.
She gives Tony Stark a gift, and it's a candle inside the box and not the other arc reactor.
It's an arc reactor at the bottom of the candle, and she's like, "Remember that smell?"
Proof that I was in the movie.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay, there were layers to those jokes.
This is gonna be the lost Patreon
Funny
episode.
enough, she took her goop and put it in his lap. Ew. I'm sorry.
Oh no. It's like it's so hard to watch that movie with Robert Downey Jr. Like, and he's classic through the entire movie. Like, watching this and then going all the way to Endgame, you can see how he's evolved as the character, but he still just brings it the entire time. Mm-hmm. And there's a good scene where they're trying to have a back and forth at a party, and he's doing his trademark real quick, like funny short responses, and she's just overly explaining the situation, which is the script, but she's just going, you're here, and I'm like, give him something to work off of, for the love of God, Candle Lady.
Yeah,
sure.
Candle Lady.
Candle Lady. Wow. So we spent the 5 minutes before we hit the record button just shitting on Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, we did.
And I do strongly dislike her as a person. I actually don't have problems with her acting.
Okay.
In this franchise. I wouldn't call it memorable. I think it's just a shame that she's up against Robert Downey Jr. And again, that might just be the script. I know she's boring when she's doing her whole walk around with a clipboard and state things matter-of-factly, but that is what the character's asking for until they definitely establish their relationship. Granted, now that I think about it, she still kind of talks like that after they solidify their relationship. So
but I do have to say,
so maybe
I feel
just want her
it
to
gets
be good.
better
She's not.
Throughout Iron Man 2 and 3, her character.
Somewhat.
If we were I mean, if you're going off just this movie alone and there was never another Iron Man, then yeah, it was really bad. But it does make sense later on.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like I may be alone in this, but it's just rewatching it. Every scene that Robert Downey Jr.'s in, it draws you in. He kind of walks in and changes the whole scene to be like, hey, look at me, which is Tony Stark in its essence. But I feel everybody else in the main cast, even Jeff Bridges a little bit, just don't do that good of a job. And I kind of feel like if it wasn't Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, the whole movie would have kind of fell apart. I think a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people came to the consensus that he is, in fact, Tony Stark. And just any other scene where it's just the other characters.
Well, and what's bizarre to think about, though, is that, we say that now he is Tony Stark, but it's not that he was a perfect match for what Tony Stark already was on the pages. It's that we have now reinterpreted what Tony Stark is to match Robert Downey Jr. because he went into this movie and played himself. And honestly, like before this movie, I know he kind of had his time in the spotlight before this, and then the whole drug addiction and rehab thing happened, and this was his big comeback. But like, this was his big comeback. People didn't care about Robert Downey Jr. before this movie. I mean, at one time, but not in the time period right before this. So they brought in a guy that nobody cared about, and he just kind of played himself, and then he definitively recreated a comic book character and made this movie good, and made this movie universe survive, and made 100 other film studios try to establish universes and fail at it. It's all on his shoulders.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. started the trend of other studios trying to make shared universes and it falling apart. Dark universe.
Oh, wow.
Not that Marvel's the first one. I know there was like Universal Monsters before that, and there was like the kaiju movies that crossed over, but of like modern cinema. Wow, yeah, it is crazy that he's really the only standout. Everyone is just fine. What about Terrence Howard?
You mean Discount Don Cheadle?
Brody. The guy that's like trying to make his own math system. They just got some real lunatics in this.
They really did. And like Terrence Howard, like I don't know what he was. I'm never like I don't want to like shit on a person I really don't know. But like him as Rhodey was just like anytime he was there, it'd be like, "What, Tony? What are you doing? Where are you going? What's going on?" He was just very like weirdly breathy, and it was just this whole like he showed up winded and was kind of tired. And just like talked him through stuff. And the only scene I really liked him in was whenever he's on the phone and Tony is avoiding the jets. Because like the sarcasm was really good with the back and forth between them.
Yeah.
And then like after that though,
like
he kind of went back to being just, I'm the guy, I'm Rhodey, hey.
Yeah, and he's just, of the Iron Man comics I've read, which are all older. I haven't really read anything recent. At some point in time, I read every Iron Man comic from 60 whatever he got introduced up to like the early 90s.
That's a lot of lore.
The way that was years ago now, but the way I remember Rhodey there, I feel like Terrence Howard's Rhodey was more accurate to that, but he's also just not fun, and I don't buy him as Tony Stark's friend.
Yeah. Absolutely. The whole scene when they're in the jet and he's trying to tell him to relax and have a couple of drinks. That whole scene, Terrence Howard, I felt like he was trying to oversell that he was drinking and having a good time because it just turned into a depressed alcoholic kind of scene.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. played it off really well because it really seemed like, he's talking about, when I'm in there and, I'm with my platoon and we're doing this and that, and Tony Stark's like, I don't give a shit, like I'm trying to have fun.
He's like, look at the dancers. Yeah.
And then yet again, Tony Stark, or rather Robert Downey Jr. kind of defining the scene again, and kind of just mitigating that character entirely.
Yeah, sure. So maybe the time for Rhodey comparisons was more Iron Man 2, but evaluating how he did in this film without comparison, he was just there. He's fine. He's not memorable.
No.
He's also a crazy asshole IRL, but that's a different judgment than how he did in this movie.
We'll bring it up in the next weekly.
Well, this like one thing I will give the. Sorry. Yeah, you first.
Sure. No, you go ahead.
So polite.
I was about to move far away from actors. If you have anything more to say about particular,
I was literally about to do the same thing. So you're okay.
Okay. Oh well, shit. Maybe I need to mention Coulson before we move on.
That's a Shield, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is he the second most memorable character?
Like
right.
his stoicness was so funny because he would just walk up and give you the dead stare and be like, "We're from the Strategic Homeland Intelligence Engagement something," and she was like, "That's a long name," and he's like, "We're working on it." And you could weirdly see pain.
Department.
Like you could
You
see
had me.
Logistics division.
You had me until the end, man. I was gonna be like, oh shit, he knows it. Just call it SHIELD.
No, it's Strategic Homeland
Investigation?
Intervention Enforcement. That's
Division?
not right. Logistics Division. It's definitely Division. It's
Commenters,
SHIELD.
shit on us and how we don't know what SHIELD stands for.
I mean, it's a backronym.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so Agent Coulson is not a whole lot of a character here, but he is actually kind of the beginning foundation of this being a universe, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know it at the time until the post-credit scene, but Phil Coulson is a character that was obviously intended to keep showing up in the next few movies, and he's a character that was invented for these movies that people ended up loving. There are some characters that get completely reinvented for movies and TV, and people end up loving those versions of them. But
Yeah.
Phil Coulson's a completely original character that ended up being a fan favorite and getting his own show, and it being the longest running Marvel show. Yeah, so that's good stuff. Moving past actors and performances, though, I wanted to mention the music. I think the Marvel movies frequently get a criticism that I don't think is fair, that their scores are all bad or underwhelming because they're not particularly memorable. And while I do think that the MCU and the people behind it could put more effort into making sure that like melodic themes get carried over and used more often, and it is a bit disappointing that they don't do that. I don't like this idea, particularly in film, that memorability is the one thing that defines how good the music is. It's about suiting the movie. Like,
I'm so glad you
sing-
said that.
If I
Yeah.
start singing Hot Problems right now, you're going to start singing with me and you're not going to like it, but you remember that song. It's memorable. It doesn't mean it's good.
It just means I have a really big heart.
Well, like, it's Marvel even, I think they even heard that criticism and accentuated that. And I know it's a different movie, but the Avengers theme is so very like powerful, but it's a very simple set of beats where all you need is like Captain America dropping into a scene and it's like dun 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 and like that's it. And you're already like you feel the hype, and it can be something very simplistic that I don't have to always have it in my head. I'll be watching the movie, a musical sting hits, and I'm still like psyched. Like it doesn't have to be
Right.
Not every one of the Marvel movies has to have like the Star Wars level of every tune I remember and I hum it in my in my sleep. So
yeah. Well, and although, like, I don't mean to draw credit away from John Williams here, but because he's considered one of the greats, and he is, in my opinion, but because he's one of the greats and his big thing is having strong, memorable motifs that are good, not hot problems, but then using them over and over again. Because one of the greats works that way, like, we've got this idea now that that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. Like, the Star Wars score is one of the best, if not the best, the original trilogy anyway. But it's not fair to compare that to other movies and say it's the best because you remember it the most. You remember it the most because every motif in the series plays 1,000,000 times, and then you watched those movies 1,000,000 times.
But also, to be fair, though, that theme has been around a lot longer than the Marvel movies.
Yeah, like the Avengers
Well, that's
theme,
part of why they've watched it 1,000,000 times, though.
That's fair. Okay.
Is that it's been around so long and it's so fundamental to so many people's childhoods. And people are just kind of pretending that how many times they've heard it isn't a factor. I specifically go on this rant for this movie because I think this movie does have memorable themes and motifs, and I notice the music more often than I do in other Marvel movies. And it's kind of because it goes for a less conventional score. It's not so much orchestral like most film scores. It's really
I'm going to cut you off real
rock.
quick. Are we talking
There's
about
guitars in it?
The original score or the licensed stuff that's in it as well?
Not licensed music. I'm talking about the score that straight up has rock guitar riffs in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think rather than go on my little rant there, Iron Man might be a place where I point people when they say that MCU movies don't have good scores.
Because with Iron Man, there's like, and I think his theme is like a very simple dun 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 dun, and it's kind of like a building chord that just kind of like stacks every so often.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, like it works because it's very much like it's very simplistic, but like they kind of do that with the whole first movie in that franchise, which I don't know if they planned on it, but it is very just like it's such a simple chord of like. It almost like encapsulates Tony's like journey of just going from like as the chord builds, he becomes more and more of a hero. And this whole like thing of it just goes from him being some dude you would probably hear just Black Sabbath playing all the time, nothing against it. Black Sabbath's great. And then just cuts to whenever he's flying around the Iron Man suit and he's a different person, this chord just keeps building. And you're just like kind of like you're sitting at the edge of your seat like, yes.
Yes,
that's
I've
just a
always
theory.
wanted to hear 1,000
music
string instruments
theory.
go dun 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 dun. That was good, Alex. I heard you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So
It's also kind of fitting that the score to the first movie in the franchise is like this, in that it's kind of, despite being one of the more memorable in terms of a motif that can get stuck in your head, that it's kind of dialed back and simplistic compared to the later. They're going for a rock sound here that, outside of like prog rock or like fusion, I guess, it's inherently kind of simpler than going for the normal fleshed out orchestral thing that the Avengers would eventually end up going to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the music that accompanies Tony kind of
there's not a ton of storytelling inside the music.
becomes more complex. Yeah.
It's there to amp up what you're visually seeing versus trying to be something that could stand off of its source.
Talking about something you visually see, I think we forgot the best actors of the movie, which are Tony Stark's robots. Specifically,
Who
the one with the extinguisher.
Dummy.
Like, that extinguisher showed so much more emotion than Gwyneth Paltrow ever will. I'm going to come across as hating this lady. And
He
you know
was
what?
there
This is
to
right.
extinguish the candle.
One day, this show could become huge and we could start like bringing on guests that are like really, really big and major. And like, not that we would ever invite Gwyneth Paltrow on the show.
Oh, day one.
Not that we would have the option to either.
She'd forget.
But we'd have like the opportunity to get like Robert Downey Jr. and he'd be like, oh, wait a minute. I just discovered that time you shit on like one of my coworkers, and I don't appreciate it. It makes me look bad if I come on here.
Or like, can you send the extinguisher robot? We'd love to have him on the show.
Yeah, he can help us with this dumpster fire of a show. Oh, man. Speaking of that kind of stuff, though, are we ready to move on to like the cinematography and CGI and such?
Just the way it looks in general? Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay, so there's a little bit of history here that I want to give you guys a history lesson of this show. Years ago, probably what, Dalton? 6 or 7 years ago now?
I'm going to call it 4 or 5.
Are you sure?
Whatever.
way.
The scores are made up and the points don't matter.
Fair.
Come on down. Draw a question out of a hat.
Question out of a hat for 800, please. Anyways, we tried doing this show a long time ago, and we were doing the Iron Man movies. This is before like we even had like weekly episodes in mind. And I remember us really liking the CGI and the effects and detail that they put into it, and not being a fan of the second movie with their CGIs and stuff.
So So I remember that discussion, and it's still true. What went right here is that they used a lot more practical effects. A lot of the time, there is a real suit or pieces of a real suit on the screen, and there's obviously less and less of that as the MCU franchise goes on. And I'm not one of those sticklers for like, oh, practical effects are always the best and they age the best. I think people underappreciate what CGI can do because when CGI is good, you're not noticing it.
Right.
But I'm not one of those people because like Lou Ferrigno Hulk versus Mark Ruffalo Hulk. Like sometimes CGI is just the right tool for the job.
Right.
But a lot of the time, the right answer is a combination of both. On what's not even technically a movie budget, Baby Yoda is one of the best looking fictional creatures there's been on screen, and it's because he's a puppet with CGI added to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's what Iron Man is here, and it still looks great. It looks better than some of the movies featuring Iron Man that come afterwards.
Yeah.
I was particularly impressed. There was like one specific moment that kind of jumped out at me where he's kind of testing the suit and tries to see how high he can go, and he freezes over, and it's the moment he hits the top and starts to fall back down. The animation on his body as he switches directions just looks so good and convincing, and that's more of a skill thing than a technology thing, maybe figuring out how to animate that to look right, but that looked incredible.
In the suit when he breaks out from the cave.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you guys caught it, but before he runs up to what was the character's name? Yinsen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you watch, you can actually see flames where the flamethrowers are that are lit. I don't know if they did that practical or if they did that CGI, but like that attention to detail.
Yeah.
You know,
how much of that suit is practical?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think there was some behind the scenes stuff that actually showed that I think they had a full build for that first suit. But like in the sense of like the practicality and like the visual aesthetic of everything, like they had so many nice nods and Easter eggs to when he first gets suited up in the like his first like I guess is the Mark III suit when it's finally the red and gold. It's a nod to the old animated show when he would walk out in his lab, like his garage, he just gets suited up and fly off. And it was like little things like that. Like they really dug back into like obscure Iron Man history and just kind of fished it out.
Yeah. Well, like and the Iron Man here, you know, built in a cave from a box of scraps, like that suit is the original Iron Man comic book suit, and then the red and gold comes very shortly after.
Because he goes from having the completely gray iron to a whole gaudy gold suit for a little bit, and then Meltor melts it, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he gets the new one.
Oh, okay. You're a little more into comics lore than I knew you were. I'm gonna have to put that in and step up my game here.
Oh god, I remember having like a collection of the Iron Man where like they showed like all the story arcs, and I had that for a while, and they had a list of all the suits, and that was really cool.
Honestly, you know, I had a few years where I got major into comic books, and it was because of these movies, and I haven't been reading them for quite a few years now. At first, it was because I started college and couldn't afford them anymore because college. But now it's because I started this goddamn show, and it's too hard to talk about comic books on this show with other people that aren't reading comic books to an audience that is probably not reading comic books. And so I'm like, man, if I don't play a video game instead of read a comic book, I'm not going to have anything to talk about.
Well, like, even like that's a good point.
I stopped reading comic books for you, viewers.
Well, it's actually hard because like thinking about that, like finding a jumping point in, it's not like the MCU where you can kind of just go back to be, I know, Iron Man, start there and just go.
Yeah.
There's so many ongoing story arcs that like if you blink for a couple months, you'll miss out on the fact that Captain America was a secret Nazi for a little bit in Secret Wars, and it's just the weirdest.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find a jump in point where like you can be like, all right, clean slate. Now I get the stories that I need.
I'm sorry.
For sure.
This conversation's reminding me of one I had at work where we were talking about The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh god.
And they were like, the movie was good. And I'm like, did they have the Nazi with the swastikas on the butt cheeks? And they were like, what are you talking about?
Like, what?
I think they were on her breasts too.
They were. But they were like, what are you talking about?
I don't remember too much because my hot take is that I hate The Dark Knight Returns. So, what comic book reading audience we did have, I just lost for us. Ooh, welcome.
They were like, you know what?
It's been this episode to figure that one out.
But like, actually going into like attention to detail, kind of like you brought up with like the swastikas on her boobs. If you knew any different dialects of, actually, if you knew the dialect Urdu from that is spoken in Afghanistan, the movie is spoiled for you in the opening moments, because that part where Tony Stark is unmasked and the terrorists are talking, they are speaking the lines you hear later. So if you know Urdu, the whole movie is spoiled for you in the first opening minutes.
Yeah, and well, and what do you do with something like that? Because is it better to fake gibberish?
Yeah, because like there's someone in the crowd, if you faked it, they're just like, that's not a language I speak there. Or there's someone in the crowd like looking around being like, no one knows what's going on. I figured it out like real early.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, and I suspect that in languages where Urdu is the main language, I suspect the dub didn't have the terrorists speaking that language though.
It'd be great if there is an Urdu dub that exists and it gets to the terrorists and they're just speaking English. They're like, yeah, don't pay. We can't believe you made us kidnap Tony Stark.
That might be what it is, though.
People in the crowd are like, we don't speak it. What's happening?
Oh, speaking of which, the 10 Rings is another comic book nod because, the Mandarin is technically wearing his 10 rings, but they're not the 10 rings. I think they kind of underestimated back here how fantastical this franchise might eventually get.
Yeah.
So the 10 rings in the literal accurate sense would work very easily now. But back at the time, they're like, oh, what else can we do with the 10 rings as a concept? Oh, that's a terrorist organization now instead of literally 10 rings.
10 mystic rings that the Mandarin used to fight Iron Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Put them all together. They form Captain Planet.
It's cute when you don't believe that they can actually go there eventually. Now we know they could have, and it's kind of annoying that they wasted the name here.
Yeah.
How about... I'm sorry. I'm going to jump back to the actors and performances here. And because talking about Terrence Howard, how did we not mention Next Time, Baby?
Yeah. What was that actual, like... Because what was it in the second movie? He actually uses that suit. And what is that called? The War Machine?
War Machine.
War Machine,
which is what I mixed up with Ironmonger. Because I'm a comic book noob.
Monger Machine. That part, that could have been their nod to like a sequel. Like that was like,
well, that's intentional. I mean, he looks at a suit and he says, "Next time, baby." And then I think the credit animation actually shows a War Machine design. So they knew they were going there. That was intentional. And then he was gone. And that's hilarious.
It is pretty funny.
Which I think it'd have been funnier had he tried to get in the suit and realized that he can't fly it without an arc reactor because he hadn't like figured that out yet. Like if he gets in, he's like, "We're going," and then Terrence Howard's just stuck in a War Machine suit that can't move, and he's like, "Tony, please." Wait, isn't that
where are you going? What are you doing?
Isn't that like Terrence Howard's
in retrospect,
like during because the final battle's about to happen?
Why didn't? I'm sorry. We've been talking.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Seconds. I'm gonna let you go first.
No, I feel so bad. We actually have we have a video chat, so we avoid this shit. And I'm an idiot. So.
Your camera has like 3 seconds of latency.
All right. So for Terrence Howard, like doesn't like that's the final battle's about to happen. And he looks like Tony goes off. He looks at the machine and goes, next time. And then he disappears until it's the end and he's like, read your notes. I'm like, what did you do? There was a fight happening out on the freeway, like right next to where you're at. Did he just go home? He was like, my best friend's got it in his hot rod colored suit. He just zoomed away, hoping everything was fine. Meanwhile, like, I got no more nicknames. The lady who forgot she was in Spider-Man is like, what do you mean I have to overload a reactor and do things with my character? Why did she get a Netflix documentary? I don't understand. Like, what did she do? Like, couldn't any of that good fortune be sprinkled to like anybody else from the MCU? Like, I'd rather watch Tom Holland be like, this is how I learned how to do flips. Like, all right.
To be fair, that clip of her not knowing she was in a Spider-Man movie was in a Jon Favreau Netflix show.
Jon Favreau's like, you can't be saying these things if you're going to get your own Netflix show.
Yeah.
That said, she got that show because she paid Netflix a lot of money to do it. It was all promo for her, and maybe we're making the issue worse by exposing more people to the Goop Lab.
I feel bad for those two people.
I didn't mean to bring this knowledge into your life.
Is all our Iron Man breakdowns going to be just us shitting on Gwyneth Paltrow?
I don't mind. I'm already... Look, I'm typing up notes here, and I'm uploading this as the Goop Lab Spotlight.
We're gonna get a crowd that we didn't expect. Like, oh my god, they're finally gonna talk about my favorite product. And we started with being like, wow, doesn't Gwyneth Paltrow suck dick? And people were like, oh no.
That really might get more views out of lack of competition.
Oh, wow. Behind the scenes, here we go.
Okay, behind the scenes, Jacob's camera and audio has been broken for like 10 seconds, and I don't know if he knows it yet or if he can hear me right now.
Wait, okay, for me, your audio, okay, like Alex has turned into pixels.
Or if Alex can
and
hear
I
me
can
right now. Oh
Dalton,
god, I just lost you both.
I can see Dalton.
Wait.
Oh, fuck, here we
back?
go. McMurray, how are you now? Good, and you? Good, and you?
I made these candles in a cave from scrap, from nothing. I used my vagina.
Okay, technically we're all back, but you guys are like 3 pixels total, so that's fine. I'm not editing any of that disaster.
We're getting a DDoS attack from like Gwyneth Paltrow's team. They just know somehow before we've uploaded. They're looking through the webcams. We're like, they're talking about it again.
They caught a whiff, as it were.
She's like, she's screw their broadcast, destroy it. They're like, we can't. It's already done. She's like, no.
Gwyneth Paltrow is a cyber terrorist.
Her goop agents. Oh man, this is spiraled.
All right, seriously, guys, can we hang up and redial?
I don't know.
I'm gonna hang up and redial.
Oh. Everybody's gone. There we go.
Shit.
What happened? Is this gonna be in the show?
I hope so. For those, because I don't know if Dalton's saying anything, video call just kind of went poop.
Yeah, like I can see Alex. We just can't see Dalton. So, hi, welcome to the Alex and Jacob Power Hour. We're going to soothe you.
How are you now?
I'm going to get real close to the mic. Like, do you like candles that smell like privates? Well, Gwyneth Paltrow has a good idea for you. She took her initials and then put 2 O's in between it because Google is a thing. That's what she did. You know, she fucking looked at Google and was like, how can I make this mine?
Hey, we have to go to the server voice chat.
Oh, wait, I'm back. You guys.
Yeah!
Dalton's back.
Maybe without video. Hold up.
It's okay. You missed a very, well, you'll hear it.
You'll hear it.
Okay, that's fun. Okay, so nobody's hit stop, right?
No.
Okay, I have a great transition back in.
Uh-oh.
Unless I keep everything you guys just said in place. We'll find out when I hear it.
That's for sure.
And that smooth transition is. So any final thoughts, you guys?
Oh, no. So many final thoughts.
You know what? As a starter for Marvel movies, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. As an advertisement for vagina candles, about a 1 out of 10. Oh God.
I think that it was a good start to whatever. It's over now.
All right.
Keep
I didn't hear any
everything
of
that got ruined in, please. Just do it.
I didn't hear any of that, and Discord is
These are
trying
the
to
scraps
shit
that we
on-
built this podcast for.
It's okay.
Discord is-
There's a lot of good material here that is terrible, but I feel like when people watch us break down through the Spotlight episode, it's going to add such a great moment.
I know you're here, Tony.
I know you're here, Tony.
Discord.
I can still see. I can still see you.
Destroyed my aiming systems.
Oh, you can fly. That's a neat
Hold
trick.
still.
Okay.
I got this company from nothing.
Shut the fuck up. Okay, before Discord shits any harder on what we're doing here, I didn't actually hear what you guys' final thoughts were, so I'm just gonna say this movie was a really good start, but not in the upper end of movies overall for Marvel, just because everyone outside of Iron Man himself is kind of boring. But
They didn't get past the freezing.
nonetheless, it gets bonus points for starting the universe and working. So those are my final thoughts. And thanks for listening to this utter total train wreck. And
It only got. It's as bad as the third act.
Oh my God.
Alex, shut the fuck up. And I hope you guys return for some reason to our next weekly episode or our next spotlight on the Incredible Hulk. Thank you for listening. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.